For as long as I can remember, my parents treated my younger sister like she was made of delicate glass. She never had to lift a finger around the house, never faced consequences for her actions, and never once heard the word, responsibility, spoken in her direction. Meanwhile, I was the reliable one, the child who followed the rules, the one they could depend on, the one expected to understand whenever my sister fell short. But things reached a new level when she had kids. Instead of growing up or stepping into her role as a parent, she remained the same person she had always been, lazy, entitled, and convinced the world owed her a break. And somehow, my parents decided I was the perfect person to pick up the slack. It started subtly. They would ask me to keep an eye on the kids for a minute, which turned into an hour. Then they began dropping them off at my room while saying, "You're home anyway." Before long, my entire weekday evenings and most weekends were swallowed by supervising homework, preparing snacks, settling tantrums, and putting the kids to sleep. I love my niece and nephew, they're sweet children and none of this is their fault, but I'm not their parent. I didn't sign up for this. Yet somehow, I became the default babysitter. The breaking point came when my parents introduced a new rule. One evening, after another long day of work where I came home exhausted and mentally drained, they asked me to sit down at the dining table. The tone in their voices told me this wasn't a casual conversation. My dad slid a piece of paper toward me and said, "We've been thinking. Since you're living here rent-free, it's only fair you contribute more. Either you continue watching the kids regularly, or you start paying full rent from next month." Full rent, not a small contribution, not a token amount, full rent, and they quoted a number that was almost half my monthly salary. I stared at them in disbelief. "You want me to pay that much? For my old childhood bedroom?" They nodded, acting like they were being perfectly reasonable. My mom chimed in, "Your sister needs help. She's overwhelmed. We thought you cared about family." The implication was obvious. If I didn't agree, I was selfish. The irony was almost painful. My sister spent her days scrolling on her phone, hanging out with her friends, and leaving her kids to whoever was unlucky enough to be around. Yet somehow, I was the one burdened with expectations. I looked at my parents and realized this wasn't a discussion. This was an ultimatum. They had already decided my role. They weren't asking me, they were assigning me. Inside, something snapped. Maybe it was accumulated exhaustion. Maybe it was the years of quiet resentment. Or maybe it was the realization that if I didn't break out now, they would keep using me forever. Instead of arguing, I simply nodded. "Okay," I said. They thought they had won. They thought they had boxed me in. But they had no idea that my mind was already far ahead. That night, once everyone went to bed, I sat on my mattress and looked around my small room. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a trap disguised as a childhood memory. I didn't want to live the rest of my life in this space, drained, unappreciated, and treated like free labor. So I quietly opened my laptop and began searching for apartments. It didn't matter if they were small, it didn't matter if they were on the outskirts of town, anything was better than being a live-in babysitter. By pure luck, I found a decent studio available immediately. Affordable, clean, simple. The landlord agreed to meet the next morning before work. I packed only what I truly needed: clothes, documents, essentials, moving silently so no one would wake up. I wasn't running away, I was reclaiming the life they had tried to dictate. As I slid my suitcase under the bed to keep it out of sight until morning, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: relief. The next day, I left for work early, suitcase in hand, and signed the lease during my lunch break. With keys in my pocket, I returned home only to quietly take the rest of my things. No dramatic speech, no confrontation, no long explanations. I didn't owe them a justification for wanting basic respect. I simply packed, walked out, and closed the door behind me. When I stepped into my new apartment that evening, it felt like inhaling fresh air after being underwater for years. It was small, yes, but everything inside belonged to me, and more importantly, my time belonged to me again. There were no screaming demands, no guilt trips, no expectations tied to chores or children. For the first time, I felt free. I didn't tell my parents. I knew they would find out soon enough. And when they did, when they walked past my empty room and realized I wasn't coming back, they would finally understand something they had ignored for too long: I am not their backup plan. I am not a substitute parent. I am not free labor. I am a grown adult who deserves respect, boundaries, and a life of my own. And leaving was only the beginning. my parents discovered I had moved out on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. My mom was the first to notice. She went to my room to ask me, yet again, to pick up my sister's kids after school because my sister was too tired from doing absolutely nothing. But when she pushed open the door, the shock hit her instantly. My bed was neatly made, the closet stood half empty, and the shelves were bare. The familiar clutter of my life was gone. Only a few forgotten hangers dangled in the corner, swaying slightly as if mocking the silence. At first, she convinced herself I must have reorganized. Then she checked the drawers. Empty. She called my name down the hallway once, twice, louder each time. When I didn't answer, panic set in. Within minutes, she was on the phone with my dad. "She's gone," she whispered, like she had stumbled upon a crime scene. "Her things, they're missing. Everything is missing." My dad rushed home, and together they searched the house like I had hidden myself in some corner out of sight. They checked the garage, the backyard, even the bathroom. But deep down, they already knew. They just refused to believe it. My sister, of course, reacted in the most dramatic way possible when she heard the news. She abandoned us, she screeched, as if I had left a family I was responsible for. She stormed around the living room, demanding answers nobody had. "What about the kids? Who's going to watch them? I have plans this weekend." It almost made me laugh. Even in my absence, she made everything about herself. By the time I got off work and checked my phone, it was filled with missed calls, voice messages, and long texts from all three of them. At first, the messages were frantic. "Where are you? Are you safe? Why didn't you tell us?" That concern lasted only a short while. Once they realized I wasn't in danger, just gone, the tone shifted immediately. "You made a selfish decision," my mom wrote. "We needed you. We had an agreement," my dad added, pretending the babysitting ultimatum was some mutually respectful deal. But the worst message came from my sister. "You can't just leave like that," she typed. "I rely on you. The kids rely on you. How dare you run away from responsibility?" The irony twisted like a knife. Responsibility. The word she had avoided her entire life was now being used against me. I didn't respond. I didn't owe them an explanation. Not when they hadn't listened to me for years, not when they had dismissed every boundary I'd tried to set. Instead, I turned off my phone and focused on unpacking. My new apartment was small, but it felt warm in a way the old house never had. Every box I opened felt like placing a piece of my life exactly where it belonged. For the first time, I wasn't living in someone else's expectations. That evening, as I sat on my new sofa eating takeout, there was a knock on my door. I froze. They wouldn't come here, would they? It was too soon. They didn't know where I lived. But paranoia crept in anyway. My heart raced as I walked to the peephole, but the face looking back wasn't my parents. It was my friend Mia, one of the few people I had told about my move. I brought housewarming snacks, she grinned, holding up a grocery bag. Her smile alone dissolved the tension in my chest. I let her in, and together we unpacked, laughed, and talked about everything I had endured over the years. As she listened, her expression went from sympathetic to furious. "They used you," she said bluntly. "And they're angry now because they lost free childcare, not because they lost you." Hearing her say it out loud made everything clearer. I had left not out of spite, but self-respect. And they were reacting not out of love, but entitlement. The next morning, I finally turned my phone back on. Predictably, the messages had grown more aggressive overnight. My dad wrote a long paragraph about family obligations. My mom sent guilt-soaked lines like, "We gave you everything, and, is this how you repay us?" And my sister, unsurprisingly, accused me of ruining her social life, because she had already planned 2 nights out this week. This time, I responded with a single message to the family group chat: "I'm safe. I moved out. I won't be babysitting anymore. Please respect my decision." No explanations. No invitations for debate. The reaction was immediate. 5 missed calls from my mom. 8 from my sister. My dad tried to take the stern but calm approach, sending, "We need to talk. Come home tonight so we can resolve this." But there was nothing left to resolve. I didn't belong in that house anymore. The moment I walked out, I closed a chapter years overdue. In the following days, my parents tried every tactic. Guilt, anger, emotional blackmail. My sister even brought the kids to my workplace once, asking me to just watch them for an hour. I calmly told her no and walked back inside. It shocked her so much she stood frozen for a full minute. Eventually, something strange happened. The calls slowed, the messages trickled down, the constant noise faded into silence. It was as if they finally realized I wasn't coming back, not as a babysitter, not as a replacement parent, not as someone to carry the weight they refused to lift. One night, about a week after the move, I sat by the window of my apartment looking out at the city lights. I felt peaceful. My life was finally my own. No more walking on eggshells. No more unwanted responsibilities. No more guilt for wanting independence. Leaving hadn't been the end, it had been the beginning of a life built on my terms. And for the first time, I wasn't scared of what came next. I was ready for it.